Today we're going to discuss the top 10 things that you're doing to stumble or perhaps stifle that career move in cybersecurity. That's right, we're moving away from the entry-level position into I've already got the position, but am I doing these things that are stopping me from getting promoted? Let's start with number 10, relying solely on tools. This is a common problem, especially against SOC analysts or people that are in a purely technical role. They're too dependent on tools. They're not doing other things, which we'll get into in a minute, but you rely too much on tools. You're not going out of your bounds, out of your comfort level to learn more about cybersecurity from maybe an intrinsic level or even a soft skill level. And so relying on those tools can actually hamper your career forward if you rely too much on a SIEM, too much on IDS, IPS, too much on the tools, but not enough on critical thinking. Do you feel like your job is literally clicking on buttons and the tools do everything for you? Well, if you're doing that, chances are you're stifling your own movement forward because, after all, you're just somebody clicking on tools. And that's never a good thing, right? To maintain that job security, we have to look outside the bounds of utilization of tools. There has to be more to it than that. Number 9, ignoring those legal or ethical boundaries. I see this, well, not so often, right? Of course, people don't show me it, but I've heard about it often. There's this ethical boundary and you kind of dip a pinky toe over it. Or there's a legal requirement and you kind of do it, but you know you're not fully doing it. Overstepping these boundaries from a legal or ethical position may not get you fired right away, but people do notice. They know if you're playing cowboy out in the cybersecurity realm, and they may not have enough information or evidence to strictly fire you, but they're definitely not going to promote you. And though this could be an issue, if you're looking at the ethical boundaries as more of those, well, guidelines, shall we say. They're boundaries, and you got to stick within them. And if you're getting outside those boundaries, either from an ethical or legal standpoint, you could actually be a problem within the company because you're opening up the organization to a lawsuit, you're opening up the organization to problems down the road, and so people do notice if you're a little bit cowboy-esque around it. And so stay within those boundaries. Number 8, overlooking those foundationals, those security basics. Believe it or not, we see this quite often where people go in and they think my job is SOC analyst or they think I'm GRC, and they completely ignore simple things like patch management, least privilege, basic multi-factor authentication tools. If you go into the office day in and day out and you see these things and you're like, I don't understand why we don't have this, but you're not doing anything to fix it or doing anything to bring it up to the attention of maybe the higher ups, that's an issue. And believe it or not, when you go into your next job and you go into the interview and they start saying, well, what did you do? Did you guys use this? And you're like, oh no, my last company didn't do it. Why not? Why weren't you a leader in that position and moved the needle forward? Why didn't you do that for that organization? If that organization straight out refuses to do it, well, that's literally on those ethical or legal boundaries that you may want to look over. You might want to start looking for a new job at that point. These are simple things that you should be doing on a day-to-day basis. All right, number 7, believe it or not, this one's a kicker for almost everybody in cybersecurity, including myself, neglecting that work-life balance. You need to take some time for yourself. You need to go on vacations. You need to have relationships outside of work. And if you find yourself going to work day in and day out and that's all you do, well, you're neglecting that work-life balance. You need to take some time away from the office. If you are so divested into work, believe it or not, higher-ups do notice. And they think, if this person going to burn out? Is this person going to put themselves into a stupor to where they're just doing work, and then all of a sudden they blow out and they are no longer reliable? Because believe it or not, that does happen. You have to have a work-life balance, whether it's in cybersecurity, IT, or wherever else. It's important to take time away. And if your boss or your organization refuses to give you vacation time or PTO, again, it may be time to start looking for another job. That's an important factor in any career field, including cybersecurity. Number 6, failing to understand the business side. I see this a lot, especially with lower-end employees from IT help desk all the way to SOC analysts, even employees that work in GRC. They understand their job. They understand jobs they've done in the past, but they fail to understand the business side of it. They think that somehow their technical capabilities or the job that they're doing is so secure and so safe, but they fail to understand the managerial aspects of it, the administrative actions of it. How can we promote you into a manager side if you don't understand basic finances? This is a big one when it comes to people that are trying to move, say, from a SOC analyst to a SOC manager. And some people are like, I don't want to be a manager. That's fine, but understanding the business side is still important. You need to understand risks. And more than just what you learn in Security Plus. You need to understand compliance. You need to understand the budget. You need to understand the overall strategy, not within just your department, but interdepartmental. And that's really a big side of it when you're looking at job growth or job progression, especially into the management side of it. Number 5, underestimating the importance of documentation. I see this. I was guilty of this one too. I'll be honest with you, right? When I was brand new into the technical field, we have this documentation, we have these tickets. What do they mean, right? Nobody reads them anyway, and so you put down one sentence and you close out the ticket, and people notice. They actually notice, and you don't realize it, but believe it or not, there is somebody out there doing data analytics on those tickets, and the lack of communication, the lack of documentation you put forward means that they can't utilize that documentation to understand the business from a bigger perspective. We see this problems in audits, we see it in investigations, we see it in data analytics, and so underestimating the power of documentation or the importance of documentation is a big one. If you can't be one of those people that understands documentation, I cannot put you into leadership role. And that's a big one. Neither can I put you in GRC, nor can I put you in type of any auditing, because that's all documentation. And so you're doomed to be in that job role for a long, long time. Believe it or not, even a team leader needs to understand documentation. And we see this quite often, especially in entry-level employees. Never underestimate the importance of that documentation. It leads us to number 4, not specializing early enough. Believe it or not, you become a SOC analyst, become an IT professional, and you're not taking the next step. You're not moving the needle forward to move beyond that. If you want to be a SOC analyst, there are roles that you can go forward. You can do incident response. You could do cloud security. You could do penetration testing. There's a lot that you can do outside of a SOC analyst. I always constantly say being a SOC analyst is like the perfect entry-level role because it goes out into all these other roles and gives you a great foundation to work in cybersecurity. But you need to have your mindset, what do I want to do next? Now, it's not important to have that like in the first 6 months. But if you've been working the job for 2 years and you don't know what next step you want to do, you need to start looking at it pretty hardcore. You need to start going, okay, this is the job that I want to do next. No one expects you to understand that really early on in your career, but if you've been a SOC analyst for 2 or 3 years, it's time to start thinking outside that box, whether that's a team leader or a manager position, which is perfectly acceptable, to threat analyst, to incident responder, to whatever. It doesn't matter. But start thinking about specializing. Start thinking about where you want to go in your next career move within the next avenue. All right, leads us to number 3, ignoring networking opportunities. Yes, you need to go to conferences. You need to go to events in cybersecurity. You need to network with people outside of your own organization. Now, for some people, that's really hard, right? Because your company won't send you. But I got to tell you, one of the big things I often tell students is there's cybersecurity conferences literally almost in every major city. And so if you're in Phoenix, for instance, you should be looking at those conferences, whether it's a tech conference or a cybersecurity conference or an IT conference. To Indianapolis, you should be looking at conferences over there. You should be attending at least a conference every year, even if you have to pay for it on your own dime, even if you have to take a PTO day to go do it, you should be doing this. And there's good reason for it, right? One, if you're already in a position in cybersecurity and you start attending conferences, you can actually tell your boss about it. Your boss's boss may understand, oh, this person is really involved. They really are taking the extra step forward into expanding their career. This is going to open you up for promotion within your own field, within your own organization. But more than that, it's going to introduce you to other professionals within the field and is going to provide you with other opportunities as you grow forward, right? The last 4 positions that I have not submitted a resume for. Well, I submitted it, but only at the request of the person that's hiring. So I want you to think about that. All of my last 4 positions have been from companies or from people that I've known through networking that are like, hey, we really would like you to move on to this next position. And through that, I've been able to grow my career to where I am today. Don't ignore networking opportunities. Make sure that you're meeting up with other people, and face-to-face communication is the way to go. Trade business cards. Even if you don't have a business card, you should be collecting theirs or talking to other people. Strike up a conversation, understand where they're coming from, and put out there that, yes, you're willing to transfer companies. You're willing to expand your job role and responsibilities, not just within outside organizations, but internally as well. believe it or not, a lot of times that hiring manager doesn't want to lose you. And so if you're willing to expand those opportunities, if you're willing to take on more responsibilities, you may find yourself promoted without even thinking about it, and it'll come so easy to you. Number 2, overlooking soft skills. I see this all the time. I see it where students, especially coming fresh into cybersecurity, to people that are in the SOC or in a technical role, they ignore the soft skills. They ignore honing that teamwork or leadership skills. They're just antisocial. You cannot be antisocial in cybersecurity. Everybody seems to think that you get to put a hoodie on and you get to sit in a dark corner somewhere and play on a computer all day, and that's our job. If you're working in this field, you know that's not true. And so you need to become more interpersonal, right? I actually had I'm not going to leave his name out, but I had a person that I knew a while ago who so desperately wanted to get promoted. He was stuck in the same position for 6 years. And he's like, I can't break out of this position. I'm like, you are so antisocial. Nobody wants to work with you because you're so antisocial. You're like cynic. Your jokes are off color. You're a great employee, but you've got some serious deficits in your soft skills. And so he went to class on how to become a better speaker, how to relate to other people. And that's fine if that's what you need to do. Today, he's sitting as a manager as a SOC, which is what his dream job was. So we need to stop focusing purely on technical roles, unless that's your dream job, is just to be in that technical position for the rest of your life. We need to start concentrating a little bit more on soft skills. You need to start things like we, not I, when you start speaking. Very rarely will you hear me say I. I always say we when I'm talking, even if I'm not part of a team, because I've trained my mind into that teamwork kind of camaraderie, right? And so we need to look at it soft skills. How do I make friends within not only my inter-department, but cross-departmental and outside of my own network? Because that's going to play big in your promotion scheme. All right, number one thing that you are doing to stifle your career, to stifle your ability to move on to the next great position, you're neglecting continuous learning. You need to continually evolve. You need to continually learn. And I'm not talking about there's a brand new patch for this thing and I have to learn the patch. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about accreditations, certifications, degrees, right? Those are what we're talking about. If you've only got Security Plus, why aren't you going for CYSA? If you already have CYSA, why aren't you moving on to CISP or CASP or CISM or CYSA? CISA, not CYSA, CISA, right? CISA. Why aren't you moving forward towards another certification? You should always be learning. ABL, always be learning. Move on with those other certifications. Move on with your degrees. Maybe you have several certifications and you want to move into management. I got some bad news for you. You almost have to have a bachelor's degree when it comes to management. Is that a hard fast rule? No. But I got to tell you, having a bachelor's degree will help you along the way. If you've already got a bachelor's degree and you've got some baseline certifications, why aren't you moving that needle forward? Why aren't you going either for a master's degree or some advanced certifications? Why aren't you moving it that way? Now, I want to preface this right off the bat, right? I have a PhD. I have a doctorate degree. I do not recommend a doctorate degree for most people, okay? The only reason to get into a doctorate degree, in my humble opinion, is to, A, you want to be a teacher or a professor for the rest of your life, which, hey, that's me. Or B, you want to do research. Again, that's me. I want to do research. And so there's really no reason to go for a PhD. If you've already got a master's degree in a related field, and it's not cybersecurity, but it's a STEM field, or I think I had to talk to somebody the other day, they said my master's degree is in criminal justice. That is somewhat a related field depending on what you're doing with it, right? If you're doing GRC or if you're doing ethics and compliance, then that's fine. You don't need to get another master's degree. Maybe a certification will do the trick, right? But if you've got a master's degree in business, or maybe it's in underwater basket weaving, having a master's degree in STEM will help you along the way, especially if you're in cybersecurity already. All right, that's it for my top 10s. Until next time, I'm Dr. K. We'll see you around.